You're listening to The Wizard, WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. We are listening to Holly Bowling, who will be joining us on the line here at WZRD in about 8 minutes. Thanks so much for listening to The Wizard, WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. You're listening to The Wizard, WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. We've been listening to Holly Bowling's rendition of the Grateful Dead's Sweet Terrapin Station off her recent album, Better Left Unsung. We are extremely fortunate to have the lovely Holly Bowling on the line with us here today at WZRD. More importantly, she will be gracing us with her presence here in Chicago this upcoming Thursday, February 9th, 2017, where she will be playing a show at City Winery. Stay tuned after her interview as we will be giving away tickets to one lucky caller. If you aren't familiar with Holly Bowling, her story is quite unique and interesting. Holly is a huge Fish fan and participant in their culture, which involves traveling the country relentlessly following their tour. She has also played piano since age 5 and is classically trained. I think I can say without offending her, and I hope, that at the core of it all, she is just a fan, spelled with a PH. But she's a fan who took chances, followed some dreams, and has now ended up with a brilliant music career. Her career started when she literally jumped up on stage from the audience and began playing piano with Marco Benevento. Marco Benevento, for our listeners who might not know, is a popular musician out of New York City, best known for his multi-genre infused piano work with the Benevento Russo duo and Joe Russo's Almost Dead. But that was barely the beginning for Holly. In 2013, Fish played an epic extended version of their song Tweezer at a show in Lake Tahoe, totaling over 30 minutes long. Holly, like most Fish fans, had this jam on repeat for days, weeks, and months after the show, and of course, most especially while traveling to the next shows of that tour. It became such a constant in Holly's life that she began to transcribe and arrange this version of the song as performed that night by 4 musicians on guitar, bass, keys, and drums to be played on piano solely by her. From there, a dream was born, and I mean that quite literally. In the fall of 2015, Holly released her first album entitled, most ironically, Distillation of a Dream. This 2-part album contains not only her arranged version of the epic Tahoe Tweezer, but also a collection of Fish songs, both live and in standard form. As exciting of the release as her first CD was, Holly has experienced opportunities of growth and tremendous proportions since. She has not only had the opportunity to share the stage with Paige McConnell, keyboard player of Fish, but also original members of the Grateful Dead. Her sit-in performances with Phil Lesh and Bob Weir, each individually, both occurred in the wake of preparation and release of her very recent second album, Better Left Unsung. For this album, as you can probably guess by the title, she arranged Grateful Dead songs and jams for solo piano. 2016 was a huge year for Holly, and it doesn't stop there. Just last week, Better Left Unsung climbed the Billboard Classical charts to spot number 25. I am so excited to pick the brain of such a talented individual about a pipe dream that came true. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Holly Bowling. Holly, are you on the line with us?
I'm here.
Hi, Holly. First, I wanted to say so many congrats on your Billboard rating. And secondly, I want to say thanks so much for calling in today and spending time with us here on WZRD. I know you're on tour and your own tour for a change and not Fish's. So I appreciate you taking out the time to talk to us just before you take the stage tonight in Michigan.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So let's start with Better Left Unsung, and we'll kind of jump around from there. When did you decide that you were going to take your Fish-themed project and do the same with the music of the Grateful Dead, and what provoked that idea?
Well, the Grateful Dead music has been a constant in my life since I was a really little kid. My parents brought me up listening to the Dead, so it's music that's always been really close to my heart. But I had been primarily exploring Fish's music in the solo piano context until I got a call from the guys at Jam Bass, and they were doing this video series counting down to the Fare Thee Well shows in Chicago that the Dead did. And they said they were going to do 50 different bands and artists, each doing a rendition of a different Dead song, and they were going to release these videos one a day, counting down the 50 days until the 50th anniversary shows. And so I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of this project, and I ended up working on this version of Eyes of the World. It was actually a version of a very particular performance of Eyes of the World from 6/18/74. And I loved the process and the way that the Dead's music translated so much to solo piano that it was pretty much an instant realization. I think halfway into that project, I said, there's no way this is going to be the only song I work on. And that quickly turned into a realization that, I'm going to want to make an album out of this. And I can't wait to really pour my heart into it and dive into it fully the way I got to with Fish's music for my first album. So it was a pretty quick realization, and I owe the guys at Jam Bass a lot of thanks for making that happen.
Great. Well, this album is just phenomenal. So all its success is so well deserved. Music transcription can be quite a challenging task, and this is a firsthand opinion. I wanted to ask you how you acquired such keen transcription skills and how challenging the transcription process was or wasn't for you for either or both bands.
There's really two different processes at work there. One is transcribing, which is hearing the notes and writing them down, and then the other half of it is arranging. Right. And they're very different skill sets. For me, transcription came fairly naturally because I studied classical piano from the time I was a little kid, and the way that I learned to play was through the Suzuki method. And their whole premise is that rather than learning to play an instrument by reading notes initially, you learn to play by ear. And then after you've really gained mastery of the music, you start to associate the written representation, whether you're reading it or writing it, with the sounds that you've already become familiar with. And this only works in an atmosphere where you've been really immersed in this music. So that's how I learned to play as a kid. And then, fast forward 15, 20 years, and I had very much immersed myself in the music of Fish and the Dead because it's where my heart lies and it's what I love. And so it's music that I already have in my head. And so it's just that same process that I've been doing my entire life, of taking the sounds that I'm hearing and then finding the written representation that describes, what I'm playing or hearing. So, my process looks, it's usually me sitting at a table with a big stack of manuscript paper and a pencil and a pair of headphones and just diving in for the transcription part. And then the arranging tends to happen more at the piano. But, it's a process that really at its roots is what I've been doing my entire life.
Yeah, no, and you are really quite amazing at it. I see extremely proficient musicians struggle in university classes to transcribe. So it's quite a talent. And actually, after watching your brief documentary quite a while ago, I remember thinking, maybe I should learn Suzuki method because I remember you talking about how that kind of helped you with your transcription process. So that is really cool. And thanks for kind of breaking that down for us. My next question does involve a little bit more of the arranging aspect. Which band overall had a more complicated process, either transcription or arrangement overall?
They're really different. And even within each band, it varies really widely. They both bands have some songs that are compositionally very complex and dense, and those can be a bit more time consuming to actually transcribe. And then both bands also have songs that are easier as far as figuring out what the notes are, but harder to figure out how to say what is trying to be conveyed in that music. Mm-hmm. Maybe the chord progressions are simpler and there's not a ton of notes going on, but in order to get the emotion to carry through and to have the correct arc of the song and really have it say what it needs to say, can take a lot more time in the arranging process. So it's just kind of, two different sets of challenges. And I wouldn't say that one applies more to one band or the other. Both bands have a catalog that spans over a lot of different styles and forms. So there's a different set of challenges with every song, and each one is a new puzzle, which I just absolutely love.
Understandable, and that's what I wanted to ask. Are there any songs in particular from each or either band that you really enjoyed bringing to fruition on solo piano the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the coolest things, I guess two things. One would be working on that Eyes of the World jam transcription. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved because it really opened my eyes to how many almost like jazz harmonies and voicings were being used in 70s Dead. And I guess I kind of knew that, but when you really start diving in and picking it apart note by note, you hear things in a new light. So that was really cool. And then on a completely opposite tangent, I really enjoyed working on songs like Wharf Rat and Bird Song that are a little more open-ended. Okay. And they're songs that are very emotionally rich, and they're very tied to the lyrical content, and I'm playing them without the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And so getting to work with this canvas that was kind of a more open space and a very emotionally deep space was really interesting. I was having to pull out of a different area rather than, fiery technical stuff and like, look how many notes I can do here and how accurately I can do this. It was really more like, how am I going to put the heart of this song into the melody line and still make it come through without any words? And so that was a really cool space to dive into.
Cool. Well, I really enjoy all of your selections on both albums, and I love Wharf Rat. I know that you had mentioned that. And okay, so let's talk about some of your sit-ins and all your awesome opportunities you've had. A few years ago, you jumped on stage with Marco Benevento, and although unrelated to these projects, that kind of jump-started your career. From what I understand, you have performed with him again, albeit by invitation and not an urge to jump on stage. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that that's such quite an honor because I just think about how many different ways that could have gone that night, you just jumping on stage. So I'm really glad that you took that risk and way to go. And I think that's so cool that you have performed with him again. And so I actually found out today that you sat in last night with Umphreys McGee.
I did. That was a ton of fun. Really psyched too.
What did you do with them?
I sat in with them for a tune called Soul Food 2.
Okay, cool. We love Umphreys here in Chicago and at WZRD. And I will get to your recent live appearances with original members of the Grateful Dead. But first, I wanted to talk about Twiddle's Tumbledown Festival in Vermont and the opportunity you got there to share the stage with Paige McConnell. Tell us about what that was like.
That was a total surprise. I met Paige before the show, and it sounded like he wasn't sure if he was going to stick around for the rest of the night through all the bands. So I kind of figured he wouldn't be there for my set. And one of the songs I was playing that night was "Squirming Coil," which, for those that aren't familiar with it, it has a huge feature for Paige, the keyboardist, and so I'm on stage playing it, and I had this moment thinking, what if Paige is still here? What if he's wandering around out in the crowd and is hearing this, And it turns out he was apparently standing side stage, unbeknownst to me, a few feet away, watching the whole thing go down. So that's kind of a funny moment. And then we were doing this seamless set transition. So my set was going to transition into Twiddles with their members joining me one by one on stage. And then I would, see myself out and they would start up their set. And as a surprise, entirely a surprise to me, not only did Twiddle come out one by one, but so did Paige McConnell. So, it was a really cool moment. Totally unplanned, at least on my end, and a very cool surprise.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you how long before you knew, but it sounds like you didn't know at all. So much for that question. But I have watched the footage multiple times, and you're just glowing. You're so happy. So that is so cool. And where does Paige rank on your influences list, with you being a pianist and also such a dedicated Phish fan?
Oh, he's definitely up there at the top. I think my influences come from a wide variety of styles, because I definitely don't just listen to Phish or just listen to jam bands. But Paige is hugely influential, and I'm always listening to what all four of those guys are doing when I see them live. But I certainly zero in on Paige from time to time and try to learn everything I can.
Very cool. Well, that was in July, and since then, the music hasn't stopped. You really have had quite an amazing 2016 and beyond. You also played with Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead at his venue in California, and Bob Weir's band in Asheville at Warren Haynes' annual Xmas Jam event. Tell us what those experiences were like.
They were both pretty unreal in a sense, and just also a ton of fun. It's funny. There's a part of me that's that's been a fan of Phish and the Dead for so long. And there's a part of me that is just incredibly excited and probably should be nervous for the opportunity. But then there's this other large part of me that's a musician and just so happy to make music with people, and especially people who have been doing it for that long and are just such masters of their craft. It's just an incredibly fun and joyful and energizing experience. And I'm glad I got the opportunity. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's like really amazing. And I think it's so awesome that you can get through your nerves by being like, oh, well, this is what I do, and I'm going to do this. So that is just truly even more amazing. But you really had a really great first year or so as a career musician, and we're all so very happy for you, both in the jam band scene and here at WZRD. I wanted to ask you some questions about what you're doing on this tour. Have you been playing selections from both bands, or is this tour dedicated solely to the release of Better Left Unsung?
It is a mix of songs by Fish and the Dead. I did a couple of shows that were just Grateful Dead, like my CD release party was at Phil Lesch's venue, Terrapin Crossroads up in San Rafael. And for that show, I did all Grateful Dead because it was a special night. But in general, I mix the two catalogs together. And that's a really interesting thing to try to do because they occupy very different sonic and emotional spaces in my mind. And, if you're going to play a song like It's Ice, it has a lot of dissonance and crazy rhythms, and it's a very driving, energetic piece of music. And then you're going to go from that into Birdsong or Road Jimmy or something like that. There's a long path to travel between point A and point B there, and you certainly can't just jump from one into the other. Mm-hmm. So that gives me the opportunity to kind of take flight in between and take a long journey and move through a lot of these different spaces and tonal areas and moods and feelings and everything to get from one to the other, which leaves a lot of space for my own improvisation and for me to kind of leave the question open and see what appears. And so, yeah, it's a mix of both bands and of whatever comes into my fingers that night.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see you perform next week. And you kind of answered my next question as well, which is, are your shows ever improv based like the band you replicate, or do you always perform as composed in the tradition of classical music?
That is a great question. My shows are really a mix of, I guess there's three different things, but I'll lay out the different areas for you. On the one hand, the thing that started all this is what I call jam transcriptions. So that's when I'm taking a particular performance, particular improv-based performance of a song from a particular date and writing out the band's improv note for note and then arranging it into something that I can play. So that's very much drawing from the classical tradition. It's the same idea as a symphonic reduction where someone will take something for orchestra and arrange it to be played by piano. Except for in this case, rather than starting with an orchestral work, I'm starting with a piece of improvisation performed by Fish or the Grateful Dead. But when I play those jam transcriptions, they're the same every time. I'm trying to replicate, recreate, or reimagine something that's been done and just show it in a new light. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have songs that are very improv-based when the original band played them and very improv-based when I play them. So Dark Star, for example, the version on my album is 27 minutes long, and Dark Star itself as a song really has around 2 minutes of structure. And so everything else is whatever you want it to be. It's this big open canvas that you can paint whatever you want. And so when I play Dark Star at my shows, I'm not playing a particular version. I'm playing whatever appears that night. And I really, as someone with root in the classical scene and the jam band scene, I really enjoy the polarity there between these two very different kinds of focus, Mm-hmm. The very, very composed stuff that I'm trying to get a particular way that I've thought about in advance, and I know exactly how I want it to sound. I've practiced it a million times to get it to be just that way. And then the total opposite, where I have no idea what's going to happen, and I don't want to know what's going to happen. The plan is to not have a plan.
Right.
And to be in a performance space where I get to do both of those every night just makes me incredibly happy.
Awesome. Well, great response to what you thought was a great question. So let's see. Any ideas or sneak peek into what the future of Holly Bowling might hold?
Well, I will just say I've been spending a lot of time writing originals, cool. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that and let the mystery hang for now.
Cool. And I know you're on this tour, so obviously that's consuming a ton of your time right now. All right, well, I do have one last question, and then I'll let you get on to your gig. I know you're performing tonight, and you performed with Umphreys last night, and you've been doing pre-shows for them, so I'm sure you're quite busy. And this is kind of a personal question, so I hope that's okay. I know you are probably a pretty big celebrity within the Phish culture right now, and I hope you don't mind me saying that I assume, maybe I'm wrong, But you probably aren't out there on the lot slinging stickers and refreshments anymore. Well, I know you love that life too, though. So I wanted to ask you, how has this journey changed Fish Tour for you?
I'm not able to see as many shows as I used to, but I'm very grateful for the ones that I get to attend. And even though it's different for sure, there's a great community of people around that band and around the Grateful Dead, and I still feel very much part of that community. And I'm still seeing the same faces and hugging the same people, and getting to see the music that I absolutely love a pretty good amount. So no complaints.
Cool. You're not getting stopped for autographs like every 5 seconds.
Not every 5 seconds. And everyone is very, very friendly and supportive. So
cool.
Yeah, again, no complaints.
And you were doing some like pre-Fish shows here and there too. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I did 2 shows in New York City over Fish's run at the Garden over New Year's, and that was really fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks for answering a more personal question and all of my questions. And thanks so much again for being here today. So many congrats on all of your thriving success. And I hope you have a great show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Anytime, Holly. Have a great night. Bye now. So that was Holly Bowling. She is playing this coming Thursday, February 9th at City Winery. She has given us 2 tickets to give away to one lucky caller. So if you'd like to call in and win, please call now, 773-442-4578. Again, to win free tickets to Holly Bowling at City Winery this coming Thursday. Phone number is 773-442-4578. You're listening to The Wizard, WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM. the Wizard, WZRD Chicago. We're listening to Holly Bowling, who was just on the line with us. And we gave away some tickets to a lucky winner, Eric Snodgrass. So congratulations, Eric. You're seeing Holly Bowling this Thursday at City Winery. You're listening to The Wizard, WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM.